Good morning, people of the internet. You are listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank 1 minute at a time. I'm your co-host, Hugh David.
And I'm your other co-host, Dev Sodiga. And on today's show, we're going to be looking at minute 86.
So, joining us on today's show, we have two very special guests and also with us for the rest of the week, Richard Cottrell and Graham Smith. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi.
Hello.
So, we are doing something a little bit different this week. This is something that is inspiration I've taken from other Movies by Minute podcasts I listen to, where we are taking two guests who have not seen the film, dropping them in right in media res, halfway through the film, to experience this film at with no context whatsoever. And this is something I really wanted to do right from the outset of recording this podcast. So I've really tried to choose a few choice minutes here. So hopefully this is going to be fun. I also want to point out, it was a bit of a challenge to actually find two friends of mine that I've not already subjected this film to, because it's something I do with all of my friends. And when I found out that they'd not seen this movie, I was kind of shocked.
Wow.
I mean, there has been quite a lot of films you've inflicted on me, but there's also a lot that have just passed me by. The bet. So, very quickly, just over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, Dev was back in the UK. He discovered that I'd never seen Old Boy, which was a film that was big at our university. And I was like, yeah, and I've somehow managed to avoid having it spoilt for me. So then and there, he put an appointment in our calendar for a year to the day after that to spoil Old Boy for me.
Wow.
And give me a deadline to watch the film.
Wow.
And so when he brought this up, I was like, oh no, I'm going to get another deadline. He's like, no, this is great. I can give you random sections of the film to watch and then, watch your confusion.
Okay, I have to say, yeah. So I'm going to bring it up right now. I have, despite being halfway through this, or more than halfway through this run of Movies by Minute podcast, I still have never listened to a Movies by Minute podcast. So even though Dev told me about this, I am, as a long-time film lover, I am still slightly disconcerted by the concept, let alone the idea we're just giving you guys a bunch of minutes. I mean, that at least when you're watching promotional television, at least when there's a clip, there's a star there to set it up, or the clip is self-explanatory, right? This is, frankly, in my opinion, nuts.
Yeah, at least normally there's enough to go, well, there's some sort of context, or you go, oh, famous person doing thing that they usually do, not...
Yeah, Tom Cruise is running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead, we start this minute off with somebody being strangled. Like, that is the first frame that gets brought up.
Yep. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah, so it is two people being strangled, so we can kind of give the actors... I know Graham and Richard are going to be familiar with John Cusack and have seen other films that he's done. The other person I'm not so sure they'll be familiar with, because I don't know how into the Hong Kong action movie scene they are. This is Benny Urquidez, aka Benny the Jet, who was a kickboxing world champion and a very famous martial artist who then went into movies, especially in Hong Kong, as the kind of Hong Kong film scene opened up, and you had the three brothers starting to do their stuff, and he worked with them. So it's a very, very famous kickboxer, which is context that would help you if you'd actually seen the previous 5 minutes. But
I was honestly assuming this was just a nameless extra who, clearly has got into a fight with the main character because, not even before the end of this minute, they are almost basically out of this film entirely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dying in a particularly brutal
just
manner.
Luke number 3, probably dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and ironically, he's kind of treated as the Mook number 3 throughout the film. Every time he turns up, the in-joke is that if you know action movies at the time this came out in 97, would you know who he is? The ordinary American or British viewer will have no clue. So even by 97, because 97 is the year where you're just starting to see Hong Kong's talent starting to make American films. By this point, Jackie's made Rush Hour. 97 is John Woo's. John Woo's got Hard Target out, and Van Damme's worked with a few others, and it's just this thing where Hong Kong stuff is slowly drip feeding into American film. But if you don't know that, you're not aware that that's what's happening. And this is one of those really odd moments in film where somebody goes, you know what, I want to do the action a certain way, Cusack in this case, and goes all in. And this is 2 years before The Matrix, and he's like full on training, and so he gets a real fighter to fight him. And it's a shame you guys are coming in at the end. You're missing that
he's
kind
not
of thing.
doing much kicking at this point.
No, at this point, he's down.
I mean, when you've got a pen, would you really need to kick somebody? That's what it turns out as.
Yeah.
You can just stick a pen in them, and you're good.
But I mean, it is also the fun of watching an action film in which the pen truly is mightier than the sword.
Yeah,
this and Indiana Jones.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. This film is full of these little moments that are just, they're funny if you are on, you're watching it and you're awake and you're alert, and if you're, if not, it doesn't matter because there's another gag coming, right? It's got that degree of comic pacing in the fights.
Yeah, it also kind of, those days, like I was completely unaware of, as you said, the context for who this person is. They could have just been somebody they pulled off the street, as far as I was concerned. But the fact that they are a name, and a specialist within their area.
Mm. Yeah. It would make for an interesting film if you ever get a chance to see it now.
Well, I am planning to after we've done all of this. Like, I'll sit down and find out what the fuss was about.
Whereas I'm not sure. Well, this is just going to clearly spoil it for me.
I mean, I will be interested to see if you feel that way. I mean, my partner hadn't seen this, and Dev was a bit shocked by that, so I showed it to her after one night on one recording, and she said if she'd seen it when it came out, she would have enjoyed it a lot more, which I thought was an interesting way to look at it, because she is into a lot of the stuff that I'm into. But she did feel kind of like, yeah, it's okay, but it comes from an era, a different time period in her view. Whereas this is Dev's
where things sort of have
movie.
built on it since and improved.
Yes, exactly.
Again, for stories of Dev showing films where this is the case, Dev showed me the Goonies when I was in my 20s for the first time. I'm like, I've never heard of this, I've never seen this, and like, he's like, here we go, we're watching it.
You see what I have to work with here? You see the lack of background these people have?
No, come on, why would you do that though? Once you're past the age of 10, why would you bother? Let them be. Because, dude, they're not going to go back and go, oh, I wish I'd seen that when I was 10. They're going to be like, yeah, and that's a kid's film. Moving on. It's hard. And besides which, Monster Squad is better than Goonies.
I'm not sure I've seen Monster Squad, so I'm going to do that now.
You need to see Monster Squad.
Second series of the podcast.
Oh my God. I don't think Dev's ever doing another series of a podcast ever again after this one, trust me. He volunteered to be the producer, so the fact that every episode has to be edited by him.
Yeah, that's really the kicker here. For every 3 hours recording, there's about 8 hours plus of editing, and that's only because I'm lazy.
This is why I had partly retired from podcasting before he asked me for this. So, but yes. So, gentlemen, you arrive in minute 86 in which murder is happening, or attempted murder, if you like, and then it actually happens. Pen is used in an ironic fashion, but there is blood everywhere, men in suits. What was your next thought at this point?
Well, even quite before the pen manages to puncture the neck, it was the music. It was the and you get this feeling definitely later along in the minute that the high school dance music that's going on in the background. I don't know the first song that we're hearing right at the start, but I noticed that we had this kind of happy song going on in what is a life or death situation for these two people.
I'm really glad you brought up new music. So the first song is Mirror in the Bathroom by the English Beat, which I think
Classic.
predates us a little bit and wasn't hugely popular. I know it primarily through this, and I love ska, and the English Beat are one of those iconic ska bands. And then I'm not sure, it is the end of this minute, we get 99 Luftballon.
That kicks in a bit later, kind of just as the murder is discovered.
And
I get the feeling that timing is very deliberate, and they didn't really care how the previous song ended because they just wanted this to kick off at the right moment.
Absolutely, and the previous song is actually quite a repetitive song. It kind of loops a lot, so it, as you say, it really doesn't matter when that fades out.
So have either of you two gentlemen seen a number of other 90s American indie crime films? Because obviously this comes out in 97, and so this is, at this point we've had a couple of Tarantinos and everyone is trying to make one. All these American studios are banging these things out. So I don't know if you guys have seen any of those.
Not a huge amount that I'd necessarily be able to remember is probably the other side of it.
Fair enough. Because one of the things about the music thing you've just pointed out is it's very much, that's one of the hallmarks of the era, is the ironic use of music to be pop music to be juxtaposed against violence.
Yeah,
and it reaches its apotheosis a couple of years ago in Guardians 2, where Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where James Gunn decides to have an entire spaceship massacred to the sounds of a 50s pop song in a Disney film that's rated at 12. But anyway, that shows you times have changed.
It's come a long way from A Clockwork Orange, right?
Oh, right. Just hasn't it?
Yeah. It's like how outraged people were that he had that sequence scored to Singing in the Rain.
Yes.
And I mean, even Burgess, really detested that. And
Burgess detested the whole film.
Eventually, he was on board for the making of it. I think it was the reception and the lack of understanding of the intent behind it that really upset Burgess. But I don't think he ever liked having that scoring, because I think he felt that was where it had really missed its mark. But then you've got
Tarantino
dogs, yeah, exactly. And this scene is so straight out of that, right? With the full suits, blood everywhere, and just a slightly different song.
I'd say this is the kind of 12A version as opposed to the 18 rated that's stuck in the middle with you is.
I was going to say the amount of blood for Tarantino I associate with sort of this is fairly tame.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think compared to the rest of the film, it's a lot. But I agree with you in the broad scheme of things, it's not that much.
But taking these minutes as they are, this film could have gone either way, right? Like, for all these two know, this could actually be very Tarantino-esque in the rest of the film.
Well, that's true. That's a fair point. Yeah. Would you guys have assumed that? Would you have thought at this point, like a minute in, oh yeah, this is probably a fairly Tarantino-esque film?
No, not like the thing is, after, so he gets stabbed in the neck with a pen, he dies, and then you've got the main character, I'm guessing the main character, sat there and reflecting for a minute. Like in a Tarantino film, I would expect them to move on to their next kill pretty immediately. This wouldn't be a one-on-one battle. There would be several other people after him in this school, and he would hunt them down and fight them. The fact that he's stopping to reflect, to me, says that this is the climax. And it could have been that he was the last goon, but we have no way of knowing that, and it doesn't feel Tarantino-esque. It feels like it's kind of letting its foot off the gas and saying, right, we're safe, we can move on to the emotional drama of her, who I'm guessing is the love interest in this film, because there's a bit of a formula. Coming up, finding him with the body, and then her legging it. And again, Tarantino, I think, would have had a different reaction there. I don't think it would have been this.
Yeah, I sort of feel the reactions are what pulls it away from what I'd have expected from Tarantino. It would either be more calm reactions or more panicked screaming reactions. I mean, obviously she's not that calm running away from it, but it's not so over the top.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Dev?
I like this insight because it's I'm just enjoying these revelations of these two having no context to this. This is great for me.
You have a sadistic streak, young man.
I really do. I absolutely do. Speaking of the sadism, we then have a fourth character enter the scene. So, what are your guys' thoughts on this fourth character? Because I'm super curious as to how you feel this one.
So my initial thought by the end of this minute, where like he enters the scene, sees, our main character and a dead body, and then starts being dragged into helping the disposal of this dead body. The first thought was like, yeah, your best man's the one who would help you hide a body. And Richard, I was your best man at your wedding, but please never put me in the position of helping you dispose of bodies.
No promises.
It's fine, Richard. I'll help you with that one.
I'm not going to ship it across to the US first.
You just got to cover flights, mate.
I'll hope you ship the body to the US. Make it Dev's problem.
Oh dear! It is an interesting point when you to arrive at this point. It's and to see this is to realize the bonds here. As you say, it's fairly obvious who the love interest is. It's fairly obvious what's going on there. But then also Jeremy Piven's character is clearly, as you say, best friend as of some sort as well, or at least the one with the least amount of moral objections.
Yeah,
to the moment in question,
or just stunned enough to go along with this because
They're just, what's going on? There's a body, right? Okay, what do I need to do?
Yeah.
Very much so, and it's an interesting potential insight into what they may have been like when they were at high school. On the basis that you're seeing them in high school, you can hear the music, so it's pretty clear what's going on because it's an American film. What do American films like to do with all of this? But yeah, it does speak to a kind of, this is probably what they were like when they're younger, just not involving dead bodies and pens and necks.
Yeah, just to spell it out for these two, because I'm not entirely sure they know. They're currently attending their 10-year high school reunion.
Yeah.
I guess it was something like that. I did wonder whether one of the banners saw it, but said it. But
yes, there's that class of '86 reunion that flashes up on screen briefly.
Although one thing I did notice, and it's a really minor touch, but I quite liked it because it sells the realism, is when he grabs the banner off the wall, he does leave a slight bloody stain on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I don't know whether that's going to come up later as somebody goes and figures out what happened. But it, like so many films, you wouldn't have that, and the implication of the blood down the hand.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of working out what's happened, I think there's a bit more blood on the floor that they need to worry about as well.
I mean, there's also the dead body, which is the main focus of their worries right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So in this minute, we get to some actual dialogue as well. And we have the situation within which, so there is actually as you guys said, he Cusack's character, presumably Ali, is quiet and reflective after the kill. Then the love interest, Minnie Driver, turns up, and what his first response is very crime movie like, right? It's much more in a kind of. Well, serial killer films were quite big at the time as well.
Yeah.
It feels very much in that kind of, I've been caught. Oh no.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's not me. This refrain, "It's not me," is something that recurs throughout the film, often as he's doing terrible things, which makes this sound a lot darker than it actually is when you see the film. But it's something that we've talked about several times because generally speaking, it's said in such a way that the audience kind of buys it, I feel. And I think this is the one time where it really feels like his response sounds sociopathic. And I think that's partly because of the framing of the love interest witnessing this firsthand, and then hearing that response and hearing just you can see the incredulity. You can see how it's just an inadequate response to the situation.
Yeah.
I mean, he has literally been caught red-handed, and his response is, "It wasn't me."
Yeah, exactly. I also like the fact that this is where the two genres that the film is fundamentally built on, the rom-com and the action movie, the Hitman movie, fundamentally crash into each other in a really interesting way, because if it was a Hitman movie, as you guys said already, the female character would have a very different reaction. right? There's a really interestingly measured reaction here in terms of the way, how long it takes her to kind of really get her head around what this means, what this implies, what this, suddenly she has to rewind and over everything that's happened in the film so far and revise everything she was thinking. But in a rom-com, presumably he would be over the body of another person, a woman in bed, perhaps, or snogging somebody who they'd been at school with, who he shouldn't be. It's framed just well enough that you're kind of like, it could. There's a sense of that as well, right? Like there's somebody there. They're leaning up against the lockers. He's literally right over there, sitting over them on their crotch, looking at them. It's really quite a nifty moment like that.
I mean, the eternal problem with rom-coms, I feel I'm definitely not alone in this, is like, this could all be sorted if they would just communicate like adults. The fact that a lot of real-life relationships could be fixed by communicating like adults is beside the point. But in this situation, like, she's not misinterpreting it. He has just killed this person. Like, there's no real room for misinterpretation, unlike, rom-coms where this would be an early act. Oh, there's this drunk woman who's leaning on him. She takes it the wrong way. It was actually his sister or his cousin or whatever, and all misunderstanding.
Yes. You're absolutely right. At this point, it is very much... it takes that trope, but then it does something very different with it. And I think that's the I'm hoping you guys will get to enjoy that sense of genre mashup that is the hallmark of this film, and again, the arrival of the best friend to help and his very different reaction. Like, it's similar enough, but different enough that you know that he's also revising things in his head. Leads to one of my favorite lines in the entire film, which is which is backstory. But just before we started recording, I believe you guys brought it up as something you would...
thousands of innocent people die every day, but one rich person's puppy gets exploded. I'm not sure if I'm getting that exactly right.
One millionaire's pet gets detonated, and you're marked for life.
Yeah, which I think kind of gives us the context. I'm guessing millionaire's dog got killed, millionaire put hit out on our main character. Exactly. This is what we're seeing the results of. But I do think we've skipped over something very quickly, because we do actually have the meeting of the love interest and the friend character on the stairs, and we've kind of bypassed that.
Yeah.
And for like talking about miscommunication of rom-coms, there's that. Like, there's no communication there. Minnie Driver isn't speaking anything that I can make sense of, and definitely you're not meant to.
Yeah.
As the friend goes, to help out or whatever he thinks he's doing. So
I like the fact that the friend Piven's character refers to Cusack's character as our boy. It's very much that sense of, you two were together, but I'm his best. It's very much that sense of, high school buddy. Okay, she's the girlfriend kind of thing. There's a certain sense that it's our boy, not your boyfriend, not my mate. It's this kind of weird shared thing. Which I quite like. Is a very small touch, but I like the fact that I don't know, improvisation or in the script. No, either way, it sits really well within the framework of that minute. As you say, it works well, and she is making no sense, and that's actually quite enough considering that she's running down some stairs when she delivers that performance. I think that's quite a good bit of acting to be doing.
Yeah. It's
the other thing is she's holding her shoes, like she's taken her high heels off to get to him as quickly as she can, which I thought was a neat little touch of just, it's only the fact I've watched this minute a couple of times that I actually spotted it. So,
I mean, I was thinking, it's late in the evening of whatever party is going on here. So rather than a deliberate thing for getting to the stairs quicker or whatever, it's late in the evening. It's got to the point where she's fed up with whatever shoes she's got. But although I suppose the music late at the end of the minute counteracts that a bit, but
what I'd say there is, like, if she's planning on doing that, and a lot of my friends I know who would do something similar, they'd have a pair of flats they would have changed into, as opposed to going barefoot.
Yeah, and that speaks to her character. She's the sort of person who would, again, things. It'll be interesting to see what you see when you see the film as a whole.
Yeah.
But you'll see that is actually, I think it's fair to say, a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
For her not having the flats. The other thing I like, of course, is again, if this was a typical high school rom-com, she would be wandering up there to find him for a snog in the classroom, you know, for old school. And again, you get that thing of the shoes off, you know, the signal to the audience, you know, lovey-dovey times are about to go down kind of thing. And then, of course, then it becomes I can run really fast now because I'm not wearing them. So it switches into horror movie mode. And in fact, the lighting on the stairwell is very horror movie for just a moment there, and I don't know how deliberate that was, if that was just an accident of where they were shooting.
With the really pronounced shadows up on the walls. Yeah. I hadn't noticed that until you said it. You're absolutely right.
It's one of those things when we were talking with Dr. Dennison in some of the early episodes, and we're looking at that. You and I have talked as well with other guests about the noir elements and that kind of sense of really, really old school, like, you know, 30s German expressionism. You know, there's these odd moments in the film where you're like, did they mean to do that? You know, it's not such a big budget film that you think they were trying, but it happens to just be there, and you're kind of like, that's cool. Bit of old school lighting.
Now that you've actually mentioned about that lighting, though, I'm looking at the shadows on the stairs going, where the hell are their lights even coming from?
Exactly.
Right. It's the fact that one shadow's sharp and the other shadow, like the best shadow, is very blurred. So it's like, do you just have an array of lights up at the top?
Well, no, it's the fact the light is low down at about banister level or around that.
It's actually, I think, right on the ground.
Exactly. This is why I think it's so funny, because it's like it gets the effect, but boy, does it confuse you as an audience. You're like, what's going on?
It's when she runs past the banner and just her shadow's clearly there.
And I love the fact that you see the light like from the ceiling in that scene, which is clearly not the light source that's been used to generate any of these shadows, but you can just see the one above the stairs.
All right. Anything else either of you two would like to talk about this minute?
Don't think so.
Don't think there's anything else really for this minute beyond the fact that it got 99 red balloons stuck in my head, and I'm going to have to listen to the whole song.
I mean, actually, coming back to that is one of those songs that variations of that are used in so many different films, both played sort of straight in some ways and not in others, and just so much.
Yep. There are a couple of German films of this time or slightly earlier that actually have, again, the original German version playing in them, also in kind of ironic ways. And I can't think of the name of them. I don't know, Hugh, if you can. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of, which is a bit of a Thelma and Louise in Berlin kind of movie.
Oh, not. Oh God. Yeah, I can't remember either, but I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah. Because you've obviously got this kind of German reunification long tail here, where you've got the kids that grew up with the change kind of getting to adulthood, and you see that kind of change and the introduction of a more Western style of music to a huge portion of the German population that also plays out in those. But I think here it was just, as with much of the music in this film, and for you two who haven't seen it, music is a big, big part of this film, as you've probably already gathered. I think it's just a personal favorite, and if you're going to enjoy it, you might as well enjoy it in the original German, which is
what nice. Are you, a Klingon?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Shakespeare's best in the original German. Yes, of course, we've all heard that one. Oh dear. Right. Okay. Should we call it a halt on this one?
Yeah. Just after
just
we acknowledge...
one more thing, says Columbo.
No. Just after we acknowledge that you said Shakespeare in the original German.
Yeah,
just want to put that on the table. And
it's an old joke that the Germans used to say. This is why the Star Trek parodies it in Star Trek 6. With the whole joke about the Klingon saying, "Oh, it's not Shakespeare's not as good until you've heard it in the original Klingon." That's a riff on the old joke that certain, because Germans were taught, certain era of Germans were also taught Shakespeare at school. They were taught it in German, and they thought the nuances were really good. Anyway, it's a long. I'm an English teacher. You can tell it's a literary joke.
I was going to say I have never heard that.
Yeah,
before.
it's definitely not something that's particularly well known now. It was very much a thing last century. God, last century. So, yeah. Right, folks. Dev, you ready for the outro?
I am indeed.
Okay.
And it would help if I kicked it off, which would require me to be at the right minute. So I tell you a lie, I'm not ready. Oh
Dude,
boy, more editing for Dev. More editing
Yeah,
for Dev.
sorry,
You've had
dude.
the whole episode to get that ready.
This was minute 86 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio 79.5 FM, featuring your hosts, co-writers, and co-producers Dev Sodiger and Hugh David.
Today's guests, and I guess all this week as well, will be Graham Smith, Richard Cottrell. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode. You can find us at all good podcast players, the one you're listening on, as well as YouTube, X, Spotify. In all cases, our handle is Debi Radio, DEBI Radio. And then on our website as well, debiradio.com. Once more, that is DEBI Radio.
And if you want to talk with us, you can join us on our Facebook listeners group, Debi Radio 79.5 FM Fan Club.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time.